If you're an American sports fan, you're probably thinking the Houston Astros cheating expose is the absolute worst sports scandal of the modern era. But what if I were to tell you that right now, an even bigger scandal has unfolded across the pond in English soccer? I'm Rowdy C, and I'm an ugly American, here to tell you how one English football club and its connections to Middle Eastern royalty led to one of the biggest scandals in sports history. Before we get to the subject at hand, let's get these basics out of the way. Liking this video and subscribing to my channel is always good, but what would be even better is supporting my Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get credited in my videos for your support, access to my videos before most everyone else, and even access to videos I make exclusively for my Patreon supporters. The link to join is down below. In the past few weeks, the biggest scandal in American sports has been Major League Baseball's Houston Astros having been revealed to have cheated their way to 2 American League pennants in the past 3 years through an elaborate system to steal their opponent's signals. It led to both their field manager and general manager being fired and suspended from working in baseball for a year. But while that was happening on this continent, across the Atlantic in the mother country, a scandal on an even grander scale was unfolding. Manchester City FC, one of the top soccer clubs in the English Premier League, just got handed the hammer by European soccer's governing body UEFA. Banned from participating in European competitions like the Champions League and Europa League for 2 years. This is a significant penalty because Manchester City at the moment is in 2nd place in the Premier League, which would normally qualify them for next season's UEFA Champions League. Missing out on such a tournament for 2 years means the club stands to lose hundreds of millions of pounds in revenue, in addition to the 25 million they've also been fined. So just what did Manchester City do to warrant such a punishment? Well, first we should go back to how this club rose from ashes to become one of the best in England and the world to begin with. For much of the past decade, Manchester City FC was an also-ran in the annals of English football. They were always the little brother to their in-city rivals Manchester United, and at one point, they had been relegated all the way to England's 3rd-tier league. Yeah, in Europe, your whole team gets demoted to the lower leagues if you had a bad enough season. I'll probably touch more on that at a later date. But starting in the 2000s, the club began a resurgence. They qualified for the Champions League in 2011, and then in 2012, a miracle last-minute goal from Sergio Aguero on the final day of the season lifted the club to its first top-level English championship in more than 40 years. And it would prove to not be a fluke, as the club would win 4 Premier League titles in 8 years. In a way, Manchester City's rise in England is very similar to the Astros becoming one of Major League Baseball's best. So how did City do it? Well, to steal a line from Jimmy James, money and lots of it. In 2008, the club found a brand new investor, Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, a member of the royal family of Abu Dhabi. You know, that country Garfield loved to ship Normal to. He's also currently the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates, as his half-brother is the current president of that country. This man is deep into one of the richest families on the globe, and once he became an investor in Manchester City, the club started getting massive amounts of capital pumped into it, mainly from a gigantic sponsorship deal with Etihad Airways. By the way, the current chairman of Etihad Airways, He just happens to be the undersecretary of the Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Court. Yeah, there was definitely a little greasing of the wheels in these whole transactions. The airline company agreed to pay 400 million British pounds over the course of 10 years to put its name on the club's stadium, jerseys, and training center. By comparison, Arsenal FC's sponsorship deal with Etihad's main rival Emirates Air is for £90 million over 15 years. Even when that huge deal with Etihad was signed back in 2011, major players in the Premier League, like Arsenal's then-manager Arsene Wenger, said something wasn't right about the deal. Well, we may have finally found out what that was. According to information published last November by the German news magazine Der Spiegel, much of that money from both the Etihad deal and other sponsorships from businesses claiming to operate in Abu Dhabi was actually coming from Sheikh Mansour himself. He was essentially creating shell companies to put money into and then reroute that money from the companies to the football club under the guise of sponsorships. Now, some of you might be wondering, why would he do something so covert? What would be wrong with him just putting his own money into a sports club he pretty much owns? Well, here's the problem. European football organizations like UEFA and the Premier League do not have salary caps like many of our American sports do to restrict how much a team can spend on player pay, but they do have what are known as financial fair play rules, which restrict how much money a club can lose. You can spend as much as you want, but you better be able to make all that money back through revenue. Now, this is a bit complex, but essentially by UEFA's own rules, a football club cannot attain losses of up to around 30 to 45 million euros over a 3-year period. And if you are an investor just throwing your own money into the club without the club generating as much revenue, technically the club is losing money. According to UEFA's original investigation in 2014, Manchester City lost around 180 million euros from 2012 to 2013 alone. Remember, 2012 was the year the club won its first Premier League title. So it's clear that Mansour was just spending whatever it took to get the club to the top of England's top league. By UEFA and Premier League rules, Mansour cannot just throw more of his own personal cash into the club to make up those losses. But by claiming nearly £120 million given to the club was actually from sponsorships and thus revenue, the club was able to officially cut about £60 million per year off of their deficit according to their books. Unfortunately, their cooking of the books got exposed. Now, I should point out that the penalty assessed to Manchester City as of this video's posting is not actually final. The club is reportedly planning to appeal UEFA's decision to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, airing grievances like the claim that the information Der Spiegel got was from people who illegally hacked into Manchester City's email accounts. Whatever the court's final decision might be, it's possible it might not come down until after the end of the Premier League season. So the whole league may finish the season still not knowing who all gets into the European tournaments. There's also the fact that the Premier League itself has yet to levy any potential penalties on Manchester City for violating its financial fair play rules. This could include Manchester City being relegated down to the second-tier league despite their current second-place standing. Amazingly, the club might be spared this penalty just because many of the other clubs in the league seem to be opposed to it. Even still, this remains one of the biggest sports scandals in the world, and especially for one not being plastered all over the American sports news wires. The closest scandal I can think of, at least as far as American sports go, would be when Southern Methodist University was revealed to have been paying its college football players under the table for much of the 1980s and was subsequently banned from playing any football games for 2 years. There are a number of reasons such a punishment will not happen in American pro sports, including player unions never standing for it and the lack of the aforementioned relegation and promotion system. It can really be amazing to see the differences between how sports are regulated on different sides of the ocean. Here, offenses like what Manchester City committed might result in forfeiture of draft picks tops. Over there, you can get banned from playing altogether. Would you ever approve of a system in American pro sports where your team could get banned from playing games altogether for infractions? I would love to hear your comments down below. And yes, you can expect to see more of these videos as part of this new series, as I, Rowdy the Ugly American, dares to help educate the American sports world on just what things are like on the field elsewhere in this big world.